All right, welcome back to College Sports and more with Rashad B in the house. I want to go follow up to my early video, which I talked about the UCLA football situation. And none sooner than I made that post, UCLA announced that they have fired Coach Deshaun Foster, a UCLA legend, running back, and Hall of Famer in UCLA's program. And like many, this was a soon-to-be coming event, sadly, because the hire in itself really was done lazily, conveniently, and inexpensively, to say the least, on UCLA's part. And as I talked about with the nepotism that has happened with UCLA in terms of its coaching hires, people who, and as many universities do, they hire people who have allegiance or something attached to the university, whether they be a player, coach, or something of that sort, which seems natural, seems to be a good situation for that, because you want somebody who understands the culture, who can be relatable, and will seemingly be faithful to, loyal to, committed to the program and community and all those things. And certainly those aspects Deshaun Foster seemed to have brought. However, you judged on your coaching. You judged on the W's that you get and the losses. And surely this year hasn't gone nowhere near what UCLA expected. And so, like I said, becoming college football's laughingstock obviously proved too much. Each week went by, it was just more and more. And so there's a lot of names going to be thrown out over the course of weeks and months, maybe, over who should be UCLA's next football coach. And my key things that I would say about it would be for UCLA, one is get, like I said before, an experienced coach. I know there are probably some good assistant coaches who never had a head coaching job who will make great head coaches, good head coaches, but UCLA does not need to experiment once more with an assistant, giving them the first shot, the keys to the program when you're trying to come up from the bottom. They don't need that. They need a Nick Saban type. They need someone who can come in and change that culture on its head and bring discipline, bring structure, bring, the things that they need to be a successful program. That's what I believe, first and foremost, that they have to get an experienced coach and someone who certainly can understand and be relatable to UCLA, because UCLA is LA and UCLA is West LA, and UCLA is different in that sense of it. So that's going to be big, unlike from what I've heard and what people have said about with regard to Chip Kelly not being too engaged with the boosters and the whole culture and being disconnected. Just saying, I don't know how true that necessarily is, but I'm just bringing up related to the fact that whoever the head coach will be, that they would have to be someone who can relate to that. That's essential, and so forth. So my starting point would be getting another veteran head coach person, not a fresh, hot assistant. I get an assistant who's been a head coach, but not an unproven assistant. This is what you just had. You just hired a big assistant coach, and you see how that turned out. Like I said, you had that with Carl Durrell. You had that was the name I was thinking about earlier, with some of these other ones. And they haven't turned out well. And so UCLA, if they're serious, then they will go out and try to pony up the money to get a top-notch coach you know, and likely it's going to come from somebody else's program. But again, there's some good ones out there. There's some group of 5 coaches that's out there that can do something with this. To again, someone with a plan and vision, and that's what Deshaun Foster unfortunately didn't really articulate, especially at his the Big Ten media days, both of them, the one in 2024 and the other in 2025. The vision of that, to sell it as leadership. Now, that might not just be him in terms of his own personality and just how his disposition is. But again, you're in LA and media savvy matters, just like what you see across town over there at USC. Lincoln Riley is polished up and he has the media savvy. He works the media. They work the media all summer long. Doing interviews, getting out there, doing the ESPN sort of car wash, as they call it, when you go on the circuit from the radio to the podcast to the TV and all that stuff, and doing all these different things to get the name out there, none of which got them ranked, though, oddly enough. But again, someone charismatic to that effect. And there's going to be folks, agents will be contacting UCLA. There's going to be interest from some people. You can best believe that. There's going to be interest of some names of folks that you might not think would be interested. And these are former coaches. These are coaches that's sitting on their couch right now. These are coaches who are currently in programs. Will have their people contact UCLA folks and let them know, hey, I might be interested, or I am interested in your job. And, and of course, coaches love challenges. So while the outside looking in on it might look like, man, I just want to go to UCLA, coaches are always challenging. They think they can turn something around. They think that once they can get it to a level, but that's the big part of it, getting it to that level, that yes, it could be one of the premier jobs in the country. But again, like I said in my first video on this, that it's going to take a lot, because you're talking about a lot of moving parts to get it there. It can't just be one part here and one part there. Every aspect has to be tied in, from, like I said, the administration, the boosters, the school, and as far as football goes, it has to be preeminent and committed to that, to building that type of culture, investing in resources, investing in the area things that you need to do with INL, especially right now. And that's going to be a big challenge because of UCLA being a public school, and with the things that's happening in the culture relative to equal rights and DEI stuff and all those sort of things, it remains to be seen to how that will impact towards this hire. Because there are going to be some out there who say, that, well, they just had a black coach, and do we have to go with another black coach? What is the direction in that, and how does that all play? So that's something that they'd be looking at with regard to this hire and where UCLA would go. But like I said, my quick question is, will UCLA be committed fully to football? Will they really invest resources as they need to bring that up? And that's only, like I said, half the battle, because you got to still win recruits. You can have all the facilities all you want to. There's plenty of programs with great facilities, but they don't get the top recruits. And so you're going to have to sell that you have somebody with a good salesmanship and a good recruiter to get those kids to go to UCLA. And UCLA is not an easy school to get into, because you're going to have some casualties of folks who can't get admitted and so forth. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that once things kind of die down, we might hear of a name, You're going to hear a lot of names early on, but I don't think UCLA is going to be in a rush now because they're still early in the season. And so they likely will be announcing it because, again, if they're going to be poaching another coach from another team, then they're going to likely wait anyway because there's nothing they can do, unless that coach is going to up and quit. I doubt if they do that because they might have to give back some money to that school that they're leaving for that. So if they are poaching another coach, then we might not hear nothing on that until close to the end of the season. Or maybe even later, depending on the team and how they fit into the playoff system and stuff. So we'll see how this all unfolds over the next coming weeks, particularly because, like I said, they were set up for a disaster season anyhow, given where they are at now, even more so, and given the fact that they're going to be an underdog in just about every game they have left on their schedule. And then you have to have a good recruiter to come in there and convince these kids why you should come to UCLA at the horrendous record that you just had, at your horrendous ways in which your culture is and all that stuff. And kids are impressed by that culture. They're impressed by the fact that the fans come out and show out and do all these things for you and stuff like that. So that's a big thing. And like I said, football does not appear to be number one thing at UCLA, similarly like even the other UC schools, Berkeley and the rest of them. You got fans who's okay with it, who likes it and so forth, but the full-on commitment to football and making it a powerhouse and doing all these things is quite much to ask for with UCLA and so forth. So we'll see how it plays out. I just wanted to drop this in for you, my thoughts in response to the firing of Deshaun Foster. And where does UCLA go from here? And we'll talk in with you soon enough. All right, no more talk.